All right, everybody, welcome to the Jordan River baptismal site of Jesus. We know that this was the site where Jesus was baptized because A, it's right across from Jericho, and B, it's right across from Bethany across the Jordan, which is the site that it says in the book of John that Jesus was baptized at, Bethany across the Jordan. Now, if you saw out there in the waters, we are on the border of two countries. The Jordan River divides Israel, where we're standing, from Jordan, which is on the other side, and people get baptized from both sides of this river in remembrance of who Jesus is. The moment of Jesus' baptism was the inauguration of his ministry. It's when the Father affirmed him by saying, "This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased." And it was the moment that the Spirit came on him like a dove, with Father, Son, and Holy Spirit presence all in the same place at the same time. But the baptism site of Jesus is bigger than just Jesus' baptism. In fact, it goes all the way back to the days of Joshua. You might remember the story when Joshua and all the people of Israel had been wandering in the desert for 40 years. And possibly as many as 2 million of them were camped on the other side of the Jordan River, ready to come into the promised land and take over the place that God had promised them. And so they did so. And you might remember in Joshua chapter 3, the priests were carrying the Ark of the Covenant, and as soon as they stepped into the river stopped flowing. And it was dry ground for a swath wide enough for an army to be able to walk through. And that answered a big question for the Israelites, because they were asking, is the God that we serve going to be with Joshua the same way that he was with Moses? And this miracle that would remind them of the Red Sea crossing was an emphatic yes, God is with Joshua, and it gave them confidence to establish the new kingdom in the new promised land. This was the first step of establishing the kingdom in the promised land, literally at this location. The other story that happened in this exact spot is the story of Elijah and Elisha. So at the time, Elijah was the fading prophet in the last days of his ministry, and Elisha was following him to the place where he was going to eventually be taken up into heaven. And right across the Jordan River in Jordan, what's now Jordan, what was Moab at the time, Elisha went and he was taken up in chariots of fire. And Elisha went along with him. Well, when they crossed the Jordan River in order to be able to get into the nation of Jordan, Elijah took off his cloak, also called a mantle, and he slapped the waters of the Jordan River right here, and the Jordan River stopped flowing, and they walked over on dry ground. Well, just before Elijah was taken up in the chariots of fire on the other side of the river, Elisha asked him, "Can I have a double portion of your spirit?" Well, Elijah passed on the mantle of leadership, literally his cloak, which was a mantle, passed that on to Elisha, and Elisha took it, and after Elijah was taken away, he came back to the Jordan River, where he rolled up the cloak, slapped the water, and what do you know, the water stopped flowing one more time. 3 times a miracle has happened in this location. And for Elisha, what it meant was the Spirit of God was with him the same way as it was with Elijah. Well, he comes in and ushers in this new era of miracles. The Spirit's power was so strong in him that the intensiveness of miracle working was amazing in these moments. And you see the power of God being extended through Elisha in this very place. Well, Jesus comes onto the scene at this point, or hundreds of years later, and he selects this site because of its symbolic significance. You see, when Jesus came, Jesus was also establishing a new kingdom, just like Joshua was. He was bringing in a brand new era of the Spirit's power, just like Elisha was. And when the Spirit of God came on him like a dove, it was a signal to everybody that the power of God is about to be unleashed. And of course, Jesus' period of miracles was bigger than any period of miracles that Elisha had established. And Jesus' kingdom that he established, which is now a worldwide kingdom, was bigger than anything that Joshua would establish. But he did that to demonstrate who he was and to demonstrate that God had been writing this story all the time, and he cares about locations like this obscure location of the Jordan River right across from Bethany on the other side of the Jordan.